Yeah.
That was something.
He'd fit right here.
Well, your dad was shorter than you.
Yeah. I only did one thing wrong in my life I ever regretted. I'll never ever forget it. We're out in the yard out there. He used to Gaelic wrestle me. He'd throw me all over the yard out there. You know. Like I said, I came home. I'm about 40 or 50 pounds heavier, and I must have grew quite a bit, you know. And I knew it was coming, but I was a little bit smarter then, you know, because we had the training in that. And hand on shoulder, hand on hip, see? And then on go, why, he used to kick the feet off from underneath me, see? And down I'd go, because he went to kick the foot, he didn't kick the foot, I did it, down he went. And I lifted him up. Huh? He said, you're smart enough, fella, that was it. Never Gaelic wrestled again.
So now, how did the Gaelic wrestling go again?
You put your hand on his shoulder and this hand on his hip over here. And he'd do the same to you. And on the word go, then you'd try to see who had the best strength and leverage, you know.
Oh, I see.
Well, he used to do was kick my feet out from underneath me. That was the first thing you got, was a kick. Got the feet out from underneath me.
I see.
I knew what I was doing then too, see, and then never ever again. I always regretted that I never let him.
Now, did you get your appreciation for history from your dad?
Well, the one thing about my dad, you know, and and this reunion proved to us, a lot of my relations didn't know much about Ireland. Because my uncle did, and my cousins told me that their dad never talked about it. Never. You know. And like my dad, he was a big man, my uncle did. He had a barrel chest on him you couldn't believe. He's my godfather too. But he was one of the most powerful men that ever worked in that Mountain Con mine. But my dad told me one time that the schoolmaster told him to do something, and he wouldn't do it. And the switch told him, he said, go cut a switch about that thick. So he goes out and cut the switch off the tree. And he swung it, and my uncle did, took it away. So he kicked him out of school. So my grandpa had to go. My grandpa was a big man too, I guess, because my dad told me, he told the schoolmaster, he said, you kicked my son? Yeah. Why? I went to hit him with the switch. He said, I understand that. Don't you ever hit my kids with the switch. He says, you tell them to come home and talk to me. I'll take care of the discipline at home. And you know what he says? He says the next time you take a switch to him, I'm going to tell him to go ahead and take you. Oh, my uncle did was big, boy, he had a big barrel chest. But, you know, he never talked about it. And a lot of them never talked, because, you know, my young sister Eldine didn't know too much, because like I said, when I come home from the service, 1946, she was only, well, she was born in 37. She was only 9 years old. Well, I was gone again in 48, because Evan and I got married in 1948, see. She was just a little girl when I left, and she was still a little girl when I come home. But the thing is, my dad was getting old, and my mom was getting old, and when we were kids, it was a great day on Saturday mornings, you know, when they didn't have to work, to get up and go in, when he was go in bed with him, Meany Lane, and then he'd tell us about Ireland, you know. And he loved the Rosa Torali and the little old town in the old county down were two of the songs that he really loved. And he knew all the words to it, and he would sing the songs to us. And he told us about, you know, the thatched house and the road going down around the bend to the ocean. And then he told us, you know, of all the different things. He said, you know, on the end of the house was the cows were in there, right at the end of the house. And he said, you know, John, there's more rocks in Ireland. He said, you couldn't believe it. He said, the glaciers went through and they left all the rocks. He said, you know, there isn't a wooden fence in Ireland. They're all rocks. And he told me then, a long time before I ever heard the song 40 Shades of Green, he told me there was 40 different shades of green in Ireland. But he talked to us, you know, and he told us about Ireland. Like I said in the video or on the tape or the movie, I said, well, if you're such a great place, why did you leave it? You know, when you're 17 and you knew everything. he looked me right square in the eye and he said, to make a country for the likes of you. And I never asked him again why he left.
Well, why do you think he had such an appreciation of history?
I don't know. But you know what? My father could do math. My father graduated from the 8th grade. My father knew algebra and everything else. Because when we started to learn algebra at St. Lawrence's School in the 8th grade, my father sat right there and checked the problem. He knew more algebra than I did. He told me, he says, an 8th grade education in Ireland is equal to your high schools.
Yeah.
And he could add and he could write and, you know, and he could, boy, he used to, you had to do the homework. But he did, he really appreciated, and like I said, he found time to tell us, you know. I always remember when we were kids, we didn't have much, but I always remember he used to take shingle nails, you know, and make fishing hooks out of them for me. Just with a pair of pliers and we'd go fishing out to barb, you know, the sharp end, we'd go fishing out.
They work okay?
Oh yeah, we used to go out to Brownsville, walk all the way out to Brownsville, go fishing.
Did you ever run into the overall gang or have any?
Oh, I saw them all the time.
Now,
My Uncle Dan lived in the Gulch, right over from Wyoming Street, right where, about now where the Kelly, part of the Kelly Dry is. And they hung out in that tunnel there, you know, that steam tunnel there. Well, there was 4 or 5 Burnses, and there was one Walsh, and then there was Hambone Dunn that lived right outside the con there, that yard right there. He only had one leg. He was the head of the overall gang. And then they hung out right down the street there, right below the bridge, you know. There was a tavern there. There was a bar there. And
what was it called?
Well, when Eddie Horrigan had it, was the Lost Weekend. But before that, a guy by the name of Harrington had it, and then another guy by the name of Gaffney had a bar there. Then down on the other side of the house, right above the store fence there on the other side, Tammany had a saloon in there, you know. See, they moved that fence away out. The streetcar used to go right across on the bridge there. But Tammany had a saloon there too, and he was right from Ireland. He put the shotgun right here and pushed both barrels.
Well, what was the bar's connections to the overall gang?
They hung out, they used to stand there in front of it. They had one guy, I don't know what his name was, but he always wore a Yankee baseball cap. He had a long black overcoat, and his head, he had to turn like this to talk.
Yeah.
We're going down the street one day, my dad and I walking down the street, and that's the first time I got a good look at him. And they all said hello to my dad, you know, and how's it going, Tim? Fine, fine. And then I turned around and watched him. And he says to me, you see anything green? Jesus, I jumped. Scared the heart out of me. We used to go visit my Uncle Dan, Elaine, and me, and my mom and dad. And we're coming across the tracks there by the steam tunnel. And there was Hambone Dunn was there, and a couple of yellow burns and watermelon burns. And they, how's it going, Tim? Fine, how are you? Geez, I had a hold of my dad's hand, you know. We walked on by, and I said, ain't you afraid of them? He said, no way, John. He said, they only pick on drunks. He said they couldn't stand up to a man in a fight. And that's what they did, they rolled drunks. But, yeah, that's all they were good for, was rolling drunks. And that's what they rolled them for, was their money. And then Hambone Dunn, like I said, they'd get all snaked up over there, you know. They'd drink that sterno. They'd cook off that heating oil, cooking oil, you know, the gas, sterno. Yeah, they're laying out in the yard there and all drugged up. We'd go clean their pockets.
Well, in 50, you joined the Iron Workers.
1950.
Now, how did you start becoming an iron worker? How'd that happen?